And here we go. Oh, I didn't start through the pre-show music. Here. Yay! Welcome to tomorrow.
Sorry about
Oh,
that.
we're not doing an intro this week?
We're already like 3 minutes late, man.
I
What do you
guess I
want?
guess not. We got a few seconds of it. That's okay. That's okay. Well, welcome everybody. We are having a couple of technical difficulties this morning. We're trying to get Jared in here, who um, is having a little bit of login issues, but we figured since last week we already did a little bit of a prediction show for 2025. I did want to kind of talk about a bit of the updates that have been going on with the International Space Station and some of the plans that NASA has been talking about whether or not we need to have a continuous presence or a continuous heartbeat, as they're talking about. And at NASA's request, Axiom has made a few updates and changes to their design and how they plan to move forward with their station modules. And Vast Space has had a couple of updates and things that they're looking to do. And even Russia has had a couple of interesting things that their chief of Roscosmos, the CEO of Roscosmos, Yuri Borisov, has said that is very encouraging. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. And first of all, Dutta, Ryan, how are you guys feeling this week? I'm glad that we're all able to be here today.
I am here.
And it looks like we've been able. Yes, we've got a Jared. Woo! Unfortunately, we don't have Jamie this week, but otherwise the gang's all here. So awesome! Glad you
I
were
I get
we were able
I
to
gotta
make it.
I gotta see Jared's epic shirt.
Oh, but sure,
That
it's
is
got a space shuttle on it, right?
that
Isn't
is
that
epic.
nice?
That's
That's a
fantastic.
pretty good one.
That is a
So,
very
yeah,
80s shirt.
big fan, big fan of the shuttle. So a little bit. So
I'm a big fan as well. I approve.
That is great. That is great. Oh man.
Sorry,
Well,
I
I'm
just
glad to see that everyone is
derailed
here.
you.
We got Josh Collins, Mystic Wolf. Greetings. Nice to see you. Pauline Brock. Hello. We got Ika here. Awesome. This is great.
everyone in the house, full roll call.
So yeah, Jared and Ryan, have you guys had a chance to see the updates that Axiom Space has put out about their updated plan, their roadmap for how they are going to proceed forward with their space station plans?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find the media pool here because they released a few renders of their station, which I
Mm-hmm.
now cannot find really helpfully. But I am
Is it
really
is it this?
philosophy, shall we say, that Vast is going for, because with Vast's Haven and Haven 2 station, they're just going for these, like, they have these modules that just have solar panels that come out the side. They don't have any dedicated big solar arrays. And that's kind of similar to what Axiom has now decided to do. Instead of having that huge solar array thing that was, like bolted to the top of the station, they're now having these like integrated arrays on the modules themselves and just having those. So
More
that's
power tower.
really, yeah, that's really picked up my eye on that because that's I just finding that slightly intriguing, just to say.
And this is actually the old
I wait.
station assembly right here.
I need to apologize for the lack of sound. When Mike made that slate, he forgot to add everybody to it so that we can talk over it.
Sorry about that, guys. But yeah, that part that you just saw unfurl there, that power tower is no longer going to be part of their assembly plans. And another big change is they're actually moving the docking port. In this video, you see that they are putting it into the top portion, or the front docking port that a lot of the visiting vehicles dock to. But that is where eventually, at near the end of the lifetime, the International Space Station is that port is going to be reserved for the deorbit vehicle. And because that spot is going to be needed for that, they've decided to move where the initial parts of the Axiom station are going to dock to be on the Earth-facing port, one of the bottom ports that are normally used by either the Cygnus spacecraft, or next year we're going to have 2 brand new vehicles that are also going to use those ports. So instead of having their power tower, they're kind of redoing a little bit of their plan so that they can have their power and thermal module that has a couple of experiment racks on it docked to one of those lower ports. And then from there, and the thing that's so weird about it is I think it's kind of unique. I don't know if I've ever seen this before on a space station module, where it has both a single solar panel rollout array and then a fold out radiator panel, instead of normally coming in pairs of 2.
Yeah.
I find that very...
It's unique. It's certainly unique. The thing with changing where they're going to be, where this station is going to be hosted, shall we say, from the forward port to the Nadir port, the thing that really confuses me is their reasoning is to get out of the way for the US deorbit vehicle. They're not going to be there when the US deorbit vehicle does its thing. This is going to detach from the ISS before it's deorbited with the deorbit vehicle. So why does that matter in the first place? What am I missing?
Something that I had thought about is that the other habitation modules that they are planning to launch, that they initially wanted to launch, don't have a lot of their own control. They do have some control, but they would have to be refueled after they dock to the International Space Station and wouldn't necessarily be able to be a free flyer. And the power and propulsion, the power and thermal module that they're planning now on docking first has a little bit more capability in that regard, so that it can be a free flyer. And initially they would just have that first module, the power and thermal module, and then the first habitation module, which initially was going to go first, now is going to launch second and not dock to the International Space Station at all, and transfer some stuff that's inside of the International Space Station to that Axiom module, and then undock, like you said, long before, hopefully 2 years before the end of the International Space Station, and rendezvous with that habitat module to start as a standalone station with just those 2 modules before they add more modules to that. And this is all dependent on whether or not they even get selected for the contract for this program, which is called the LEO Destinations Program. So we will definitely see. But I think that this is a good change of plans. And I also think that because this is at NASA's request, and all of the other customers and cooperative agreements that they have with other nations, that Axiom is doing just fine financially speaking. They have enough agreements in place, and it obviously seems like they're the favorite of NASA to have these sort of plans and to move some hardware inside of the space station to the Axiom station first.
Yeah, well, there were some rumors going around a few months ago that they were running out of money and that they were in debt to SpaceX and things like that. But they have the connections, they have the vision, and they have the, this is not a small thing to have partnerships from like governments of countries all around the world. That's no small feat. That's really significant for something to do that in the past only NASA and Roscosmos have done. Like nobody else has been able to do this international collaboration, which Axiom seems to be picking up on.
Yeah, I was going to say Axiom does have agreements between the United States and India as a part of getting a launch provider for their modules, and even Europe as well. So you may I don't know. We may see like a Falcon 9, a GSLV Mark III, and a Ariane 6 all involved in the building out of an Axiom station for all you know. So that'd be really, really cool.
That would be really cool. The thing that is important to me for the Axiom modules and their plan is that they actually have like node modules. The thing that I don't like about the vast plan is that there's only two, like at least their first module, their Pathfinder prototype only has one docking port on it, which limits things quite a bit. But even their future modules for Haven 2 only have two docking ports on most of them until they finally have their core module, which will be the last piece that they put up there. So, I still, in my wishful thinking, I would like to combine as many of these plans as possible. If we can get, one of those habitation modules from Axiom that have 6 docking ports on them. They have 4 radial and then 1 on each end. They would be able to, utilize a whole bunch of these plans and make an even bigger station. So I don't know if that is even in the consideration at all, but since they're all using the same, international standard now for docking ports, it's certainly possible.
Mike, can you make your microphone just a little bit louder?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Hearing you just a little bit low. I had to pull everybody else down a little bit. Apologies for the technical difficulties.
There, how's that? Is that a bit better?
A little bit better, yeah. Give me that again.
Let me turn this up just a little bit more. Okay, how's that? Is that a bit better?
Or bring your mic closer to your face.
Okay, that's as loud as it's going to go right there.
That sounds great.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
We'll do it live.
Sorry about that.
We'll do it live. So I may be speaking from a place of ignorance here, but what I've seen from Vast is that their vision is maybe a little bit short-sighted. Like they want to, and maybe this makes sense, but they want to do what they're trying to do in baby steps. But their vision and what they're trying to execute for each of those steps doesn't have a broad span for expansion in the future. And I wonder if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Like on the one side, you're keeping it simple, and I get that. That's a good way to operate. But at the same time, you're basically intentionally making something that is obsolete as soon as it's launched, because you're not able to do much more than your kind of initial baby step plans with what you're making, so you can't expand on it easily, right? If you've got grand plans and you're gonna do something crazy like Axiom 6 ports on a module, like you would think that you could make that happen, utilize the 6 ports for something in a smaller scope initially, and then be able to expand on that easily in the future. And it just doesn't seem like Vast has that kind of grand vision for what they're trying to do. Am I wrong about that?
I mean, I feel like that with at least their first module, Haven 1, actually, Aravel sums this up really well, and I agree with this. I think that the idea of Haven 1 is to really prove themselves to NASA to get the contracts and funding and the knowledge they'll get from building it. And I agree with that. I think that they don't want it to, have this be too big of a project and really expensive in order for them just to get that initial contract, because if they don't, then they can still do a handful of small private missions with that before they would deorbit it, which I also kind of agree is a bit short-sighted. Like, I really want to see a way to be able to utilize that Pathfinder station as much as possible. I would really like to be able to dock that to either one of the Axiom modules or some other node module out there. There's other companies working on this stuff. We got Sierra Space with their inflatable modules, but beyond that, they have made So Sierra Space is not only working on that; they have their Dream Chaser space plane, and at the back of it is what they call their Star Chaser module, which is the docking port, and they can fit a little bit more. It's essentially the service module of the Dream Chaser. They've made a bigger version of that that also has 4 docking ports, 2 on the sides and 1 on each end of it, and you could utilize that to connect together multiple modules. And since Blue Origin is so focused on a lot of their other projects right now, it seems like Sierra Space is trying to move a bit forward ahead on their own instead of, tying together with the Orbital Reef project that Blue Origin has been working on and gotten some of the Space Act agreements with NASA for.
I think with Vast's like single module, it, even from a safety perspective, it's a little bit scary because you've got a single module with a single port and a Dragon that attaches to it. So if you've got Dragon attached to a single module and something goes wrong, like where's your emergency case? Where's your emergency escape? How do you get out? If you get those two attached to each other and your docking port fails to release, and your Dragon starts going haywire, you are screwed. Right?
Yeah.
There's no way to you can't send up another Dragon and attach it to another spot. That's all you've got. Like who you've built a closet. You've only got one door.
I think that they've done a lot of work though on those docking ports to prevent that sort of thing from happening. I mean, we've been using this docking adapter now for a little over 20 years, and the docking ports on that vast space station are actually made by SpaceX. So it's the same docking ports that Dragon has been using at the International Space Station now for several years. And
we've been building buses for 100 years, and still there's emergency exits on buses. There's emergency exits on planes that you normally don't use. But in the case of emergency, you're sure as hell going to want to make sure that extra door is there. Like,
I mean, sometimes they're used even if you don't need them. Maybe that sometimes they're used a bit, prematurely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
How many rooms do you walk into where there is no way out except for the door you came in?
This one.
That is a safety violation, and
every room in my house, including my house.
No, that's
no. You've got a window. I've got a
windows.
window. Yeah.
You've got windows.
I got 3 exits in this place. So I'm gonna get out no matter what. You can't stop me. You're not my mom. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very good point. I don't know what their emergency plans would be for that.
I think it's a little bit arrogant to think that they've solved all of those problems and don't need an emergency strategy.
Yeah. Also, I'm just briefly reading up on it too, that there is no life support system on board of it. That the life support system of Crew Dragon itself is going to be the life support system on there.
No,
right?
That's not true. No. That's not true. It's going to have.
Correct me then.
It's going to have its own life support system. As a matter of fact, they're launching what they call the Haven demo. It's just a small satellite spacecraft that has a couple pressure modules and is testing all those systems for the life support, the ECLIS system. That's actually launching on the Bandwagon 3, I believe, in February on a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket, one of the rideshare missions. And it even has thrusters on board, so after they've performed all of their tests and everything, they'll do a deorbit burn so that it doesn't become a piece of space junk. But the Haven module will definitely have its own life support system. It is not dependent on the Dragon capsule for its life support.
Okay, I hope so, because it's a Reuters report saying that it is. So I don't know whether someone got it really wrong there or not, but we'll have to check it out on it. So,
but Dada, you do bring up a really good point.
That's
I have no
good,
idea. I have no idea what their emergency plan was. Hopefully, they would have suits on board so that they could.
They've got a window.
Their suits.
They can knock the window out. They'll have a little hammer in a glass case, smash in case of emergency, knock the window out, and it's fine.
Oh man.
Flashbacks
Everything
to
will be sucked out of that station very, very quickly if they smash the window in case of an emergency. I can assure you of that.
flashbacks to Ross Perot. There's been this great sucking sound down to the south.
Oh my gosh. Actually, yes, Arabelle, this is true. So Haven 1's life support systems will have more in-flight testing than the second Orion. Kinda.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's true.
Ooh. Oh man. Ooh, truth hurts. Truth hurts. Oh man.
Excuse me. Oh
Yowza.
man. But I believe, though, that it's a similar type of story with the Axiom modules, that each module is going to have its own life support system and won't be dependent on each other.
Gavin, that escape plan sucks.
Well, what's the... To be honest, I mean, what's the escape plan for the International Space Station?
Well,
Get into the vehicle. Get into the vehicle you got there on.
Though. Yeah, but they've got multiple ports. If there's a fire in one, you're you're rarely in a dead end. And you've got multiple directions that you can go, and you've got multiple options for attaching an emergency vehicle.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of the Salyut program.
You've also got doors that you can close between modules.
Yeah.
So if you had a fire in one module, you could leave it and seal the door behind you, and concentrate the fire in that location.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't spread throughout the vehicle.
I mean, the hatch between the US segment and the Russian segment is closed very regularly because of the leaks in Zvezda. So when cosmonauts need to work in that part of Zvezda where the leaks are, they close the hatch, and the US segment and the Russian segment are completely separated.
Yeah.
Good times. By the way, I just wanted to say I'm doing a little more digging with that there. The article basically was very poorly worded in that the life support system on Haven 1 is going to be based on the life support system from SpaceX's Crew Dragon. It's just writing is hard for some people. So
based on
and
as
then
in similar
reading
technology.
Comprehension even harder apparently too. So so I'm glad I could find that out and clear that up and
that's actually pretty smart if they can make an arrangement with SpaceX to have SpaceX make the life support system for now in order for them to be able to test their modules. That's actually pretty smart.
And they're doing quite a bit of stuff like that. They, as I said earlier, the docking ports are also the same ones that SpaceX. I mean, they contracted SpaceX to build those for them. Mm-hmm. They are getting their solar panels from the same supplier that SpaceX originally got the solar panels for Dragon Cargo from, although they make their own now. The thrusters for all the attitude control are being supplied by Impulse Space, Tom Mueller's company. And I believe, I mean, the dome, they say that they've made the window dome themselves, but it looks almost exactly identical down to the measurements of the cupola for like the Inspiration 4 mission, that cupola dome that they had on the Dragon capsule. It looks and measures almost exactly the same. So, however, they claim that they've manufactured that themselves. And as for the rest of it, the pressure module and the rest of the structure, including the micrometeorite shielding, Vast claims to be making all of that stuff themselves. Now, as for Axiom, it seems like Thales Alenia is doing most of the work for that. The docking ports also are being done by Thales Alenia, and they claim that they're doing a lot of the life support systems themselves, although I haven't seen a whole lot of stuff yet as to, where they're at in that progress. But I'm assuming that that's going in tandem with their spacesuit development, since, same system in miniature, in a sense.
I mean, my uneducated brain would assume that, doing life support for a space station and life support for a spacesuit will have some similarities, at least somewhere. And, they're being contracted by NASA to make this, suit that's capable of walking around on the surface of the moon. So I'd hope if you're able to keep someone alive inside of that, you'd be able to keep someone alive inside of a space station. Obviously, the volume of a space station is much larger, but at the end of the day, an EVA suit is just a mini spaceship. So
Yeah, absolutely. It really is. It's a miniature spaceship. So I find these plans really interesting.
Single person.
Yeah, single person. As for Orbital Reef, I mean, I don't know if this is going to happen, guys, at least not anytime soon. I mean, it's an interesting plan, and that's my other favorite little single person spacecraft there. They've got this tiny little thing that you'd be able to climb in that has its own robotic arms to be able to go out and do work in. And I don't know. I find that kind of interesting, but I feel like Blue Origin is so tied up with all of their other projects, getting New Glenn off the ground and getting that flying. And then the next big thing that has a very tight deadline of the human lander system. I feel like those are going to take the priority over this space station. And I think that that's why Sierra Nevada has kind of pulled away from Orbital Reef a little bit, and they have their own Pathfinder mission that hopefully might launch next year, but probably isn't going to launch until 2026 to test out their systems in orbit and possibly even have a crew visiting to their Pathfinder. And again, I would, if these things work, if the Vast Haven 1 space station works, their little single module, and the Sierra Space Pathfinder works, I would love to put up some sort of node and utilize those for as long as we can, instead of them literally being a single use of getting like one crew visit and then that's it. I would be very, very sad if that's all that happens for Haven 1.
Hold on, are they using rectangular windows?
Yes, they are, and supposedly that is what rectangular and curved. Supposedly, that's what they have had a lot of trouble with, is these windows. They've been blaming lack of progress for Orbital Reef for over a year and a half now on those windows. So
maybe just make them round.
So that's what the holdup is.
Supposedly, without going into any further detail, can't find any actual, studies or material analysis or anything like that. That's just the claim that has been made. So, I literally have no idea how far along they are.
The Concorde's windows were this big because at the time they couldn't figure out how to make something any bigger on in a pressure vessel.
Yeah. I was actually kind of when I went to the Intrepid Museum and they have the BA Concorde you can sit in, I was like, I got my phone out. I was like, how on earth were these window sizes acceptable? The window is the size of my phone.
Right.
And when you fly home on a Dreamliner and the window is like this big, and it's like, whoa.
The size of a sheet of paper.
Yeah.
It's that's why are they making it complicated?
Don't know.
I guess I can see where they're coming from, and there may be a standard that they've got internally. Like you look at the size of the windows in Blue Origin's gumdrop capsule for New Shepard. I guess it makes sense that they're trying to have that epic view, but at the same time, you're just making it hard for yourself. And if that's your stumbling block, like, revise your design, man. Get on with it.
Yeah. Although I understand the points with, they've got to get New Glenn online, the Blue Moon, which is their HLS lander, that's really important. That's coming up in a couple of years. But SpaceX is fixated on Mars. Blue Origin is fixated on making Earth orbit, that ultimate destination. That like they have Blue Ring, which is their orbital tug designed to do orbital tug things on orbit. Orbital Reef is designed to be this huge destination in low Earth orbit. It's like, well, if you're gonna move your attention to the thing that you didn't make your company for, what's the what's your vision? That's what confuses me.
Yeah.
Melanie, also something that takes 2 years.
To get a Windows update. Oh
And
man.
yeah, transparent aluminum. You just call it Scotty. Funny story. My dad worked at the company that they filmed that at. While they filmed that at,
No way.
yeah.
That must have been a ton of fun.
A keyboard. How quaint.
Oh, I guess I'll have to do it the old way. Computer.
Hello, computer.
Hello, computer.
Well, at the end of the day, all of this stuff with the space station ultimately is up to NASA at the end as to who they're going to pick. And there's still a chance that they might pick more than one provider. They might pick two. Like I said, I'd really love to see a combination of these guys' ideas if the hardware can fit together. If not, then, whichever one that they choose to go with, I'm confident that, they'll have enough data to be able to make a good informed decision. But
So I've got a couple of questions about this decision then. When is it supposed to be made? Who do we think is going to be administrator then, and what do you think the chances are, or what do you think the result of their decisions will be?
right now, the decisions for the next phase of it, there's a chance it could come late next year, but it's looking like it's not going to come until 2026 when they roll out the next phase of it. Because one part of this program has already gone forth. They've already dueled out money to Blue Origin, Axiom, and Voyager Space. VAST hasn't gotten any money yet from NASA to study their space station idea. They do have Space Act agreements in order to share technology and make sure that they're on the right path and meeting the standards, like for how much pressure they have inside of their modules, and making sure that the type of communications that they have and the payload racks will be able to fit the standard. And that's something I actually really think is cool. They've teamed up with Redwire. Redwire seems to be working with just about all of them to have the same sort of payload racks for experiments that the International Space Station already uses. Meaning that anyone who wants to fly an experiment who is on the waiting list to send up an experiment to the International Space Station now, they don't have to change anything with their hardware. They literally can plug and play so that it can go into one of these future modules. And I find that, a really smart development to pursue. So there is that. And since we only have 5 years left, NASA is trying as hard as they can to speed up the rate that they are sending and performing experiments, and trying to get as much as we possibly can out of the space station before whatever comes next. It's going to be a while before whatever is next is up to the full capability that we have with the International Space Station now.
So that decision you said comes in 2026. So
Yeah.
Let's presume that Isaacman is confirmed and he's the administrator. What effect does that have on those that will be making this down selection? And what do we think NASA is going to be? What do you think the result of this down selection will be?
There's always a chance that Isaacman will have a bias towards SpaceX, and right now SpaceX seems to be.
SpaceX isn't making one. They're not in the selection.
No, but
VAST is by
they
extension, but they're not getting any money from NASA.
And that's what I was getting at, is they have the closest relationship with VAST, whereas as of right now, NASA has the closest relationship with Axiom.
But that doesn't seem like it's a boon for SpaceX. That seems like it's a boon for VAST.
Either way, SpaceX is going to be launching modules for whoever wins and sending their Dragon capsule to those to visit those vehicles as well. So either way, SpaceX wins.
Seems that is the case for everybody except Blue Origin.
The only thing that I've seen that, aside from Orbital Reef, where Blue Origin might win, is another company, Gravitics Inc., which is working on larger than 4-meter diameter modules. Most of the space station modules at the space station are about 4.2 meters in diameter, and their Gravitics is working on a 6-meter and an 8-meter diameter module, and those could, at least the 6-meter one, could launch on New Glenn. And there's also some other orbital tugs that some people are working on that would be larger than what we have now, that they could potentially launch with New Glenn as well. So if New Glenn, I mean, if Blue
Yeah.
Origin is left out of the LEO Destinations program, they still have a chance to be able to launch stuff to those stations.
Yeah, with Ika's comment there, build a space station in a starship, and then also NRJ saying, "Oh, it's just going to be Starship." Um, yeah, you basically have a dry workshop that you're launching into orbit. It's almost it's a Skylab situation with a Starship Super Heavy if you're going to do it that way. But I was also going to say, there's somebody mentioned Bigelow earlier with their inflatable modules. Those modules were intended to be almost 7 meters in diameter, so pretty good size
Once
compared to
fully
what the
inflated.
ISS has right
Didn't
now.
somebody
Yeah,
pick up
but
that technology
unfortunately,
when Bigelow went under?
Well, that's why Sierra Nevada has been pursuing it. There's also another company
mhm.
called Max Space, which is made up of former employees of Bigelow, that's working on it. And oddly, Max Space was was it? No, it was earlier this year. Blue Origin had like a little conference in Seattle, Washington, and instead of having Sierra Space there to show off their inflatable modules, they had this other company, Max Space, there to show off their inflatable modules. So that told me that there was definitely a rift going on between Blue Origin and Sierra Space. Like, why show off this other company's inflatables? And it wasn't Bigelow's technology to begin with. That was NASA's technology, TransHab,
Yes.
and it was licensed out so that anybody could use it. Without they couldn't patent it. They couldn't say that, hey, this is our technology, you can't do that. That's why we have all these other companies now working on inflatables. That wasn't exclusive to Bigelow, because it was NASA's technology to begin with.
Araval says this might
Yep.
be naive, but I think NASA will probably make the best technical decision regardless of outside pressure. That seems to be what happened with the first HLS selection. And I'm going to say
I'd agree with that.
No, because they chose Boeing over Sierra Space for commercial cargo and commercial crew.
Well,
They down selected Sierra Space out of competition.
To Aravel's comment, though, for HLS, they chose SpaceX first and then got sued by Blue Origin to give them a contract too.
Yeah, I don't think they don't have a recent recent track record of making wise technical decisions.
My hope is that's what's going to be the biggest part of it. I mean, just looking at some of and if you guys want to learn more, it's under the Next Step 2 appendices. I believe it's Appendix H, even though it has its own program now, although you can't find a whole lot of technical stuff about it through the LEO Destinations program. But if you look at the Next Step 2 program, Appendix H, that's where all the technical information is for how they plan on selecting these space station modules, and what criteria they have, what redundancies they need to have, and all that sort of safety stuff. So I think that in the end, they will choose who they think is, the most technically capable of pulling this off.
And this is what I'm afraid of. Money talks. So when you have a lot of money to
Yep.
spend on lobbying, you can sway things your way. And particularly if Isaacman and Musk are in cahoots with each other, there's a lot that money can do.
Yeah.
NASA as a government entity has been struggling for a long time to get the money that they need to do the things that they want. And if there's money and if suddenly there's a windfall in the budget to be able to do a bunch of cool stuff, there may be some strings attached to that in order to be able to do the bidding of those that have the purse string, and it may not just be Congress.
Yeah, and it's not exactly like SpaceX doesn't do lobbying on their own as well. So, everybody lobbies. Some of
They
us
don't
just
have to.
spend a bit.
They don't have to
Some
lobby
just
now. Look at the this recent continuing resolution.
Yeah, but I'm just saying lobbying is not something that is simply exclusive to one company or the other. Every company does it, maybe not to the degree of others, but it's still
Yeah,
a
but
thing that happens.
but if you're lobbying, the point behind lobbying is where the money is that money talks, and
Yes,
more money speaks louder than less money.
yes. You can also target that very effectively as well. So don't forget that.
Well, right now, the goal is to at least have something operational by the end of 2030 so that there's something that they can continue to be doing experiments on the national laboratory level by the time that the International Space Station is deorbited. Who do you think has the best chance right now, Dutta, of being able to pull that off? Do you think that Blue Origin might be able to, or would it only be, Axiom
Not
or
not if
Vast?
they stick to rectangular windows. Um, Axiom's architecture seems the most flexible. Vast seems like they're making smart baby steps where they can still progress inside of a smaller budget. Uh, but it doesn't feel to me like they're moving quickly enough to be able to make all of those steps prior to this decision needing to be made. And again, it seems like their plans are not big grand plans. They've got plans for small modules, like single modules with single attachments. That does not a station make.
And
Um,
again,
and
that's just their
and they
Pathfinder.
may change that. Yeah, it's I know it's just a Pathfinder, but like we're not seeing from them this grand plan and a roadmap to it. Their grand plan that they've been talking about right now is just this Pathfinder. Like you don't you're SpaceX was created to shortcut all the expenditures that we were having to spend on getting payloads into orbit and getting the cost to orbit down below $10,000 a pound or whatever. And then at some point they flipped a switch, and now all of a sudden it's about putting humans on Mars. And I understand that as an evolution, and I understand that companies evolve over time, but there was always something bigger beyond getting launch costs down from SpaceX that has kept them driving towards their goals, right? So they had that grand plan, that grand vision. Maybe they didn't publish it initially for what that grand plan was going to be, but they eventually got there and eventually proclaimed that for everybody, and they've been working towards that ever since. And everything that they've been doing, from Starlink to Starship, has been in furtherance of that goal, right? If and Blue Origin is the same, even though we don't see their market progress on a daily basis like we do SpaceX's. It seems like all of the things that we are seeing from them are in furtherance of their grand plan, their big goal. What I'm not seeing from Vast is that hunger for that grand vision. I'm seeing them poking at a small vision, right? And correct me if I'm wrong. If somebody's seeing something that I'm not, let me know. But that's all I'm seeing is that little vision. So it doesn't seem like they've got that passion and hunger for that grand vision. And yeah, they've got. I think they had another step, but like beyond that, like what? Why?
Well,
So it doesn't seem like they're progressing in time like they should in order to be able to get to even their small vision, like what's next after they get there? They're just going to mass produce that small thing? That doesn't make a business plan to me.
Well, after their Haven 1, they have anywhere from a 5 to 9 module station that they have planned to be the ISS successor. But that's all dependent on whether or not they get NASA as the main customer for that. If they don't, they do have enough, other interested parties and interested customers to be able to do some smaller missions, and would definitely need to scale that back. But for those that are looking at the microgravity type of
You're talking about
research,
this?
yeah, for their Haven 2, for those who want to do microgravity research, they would be doing this station, the Haven 2. And then after that, they have a kind of a spinning artificial gravity type of module that, I mean, they've even put out pictures of that in orbit around Titan, one of the moons of Saturn. So I think they have the grand vision. I just don't think that they're being as, vocal and public about it, because there's so many things that are dependent on getting there. And if they don't have the customers to do it, then there is no business case. Why spend billions of dollars if no one's going to use it? And I agree with you that Axiom is a lot more flexible with stuff, and using a lot of the same contractors who built the U.S. side of the International Space Station, and having a lot of those types of architectures, I think, is really helpful. But I don't know whether or not they'll able to pull things off or not is an entirely different story.
Mozilla says Vast doesn't have $1 billion backer with that vision, just a company trying to do well on a section of the market, and that's not true.
They
do
actually
have a $1 billion
do.
backer, though he is a $2 billionaire, not a $300 billionaire.
Yeah. So it's not limitless.
$1 billion is still $1 billion.
And the 300 billionaire is now a 600 billionaire.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Aside from that, though, Araville actually brought up a great point earlier, saying that the good news is that one way or another there will be a continuous presence in low Earth orbit because of the Chinese and the Tiangong space station. And I think that's what NASA is afraid of. They're afraid of losing some of our international partners to China if we're not able to keep up and be able to provide that opportunity.
Well, if that's not inspiration for another space race, what is?
I am all for it. I am all for as many space races as we can. Competition is good, breeds innovation.
Yep.
That's what I want to see.
Yeah, well, I mean,
we just need to document it well this time.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not exactly like China is just sitting on their laurels and deciding not to try to swipe, international partners that the United States and NASA have worked with. So, I mean, they have very much been actively in talks with a multitude of groups from Europe, from the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. Like, they're not sitting around.
And I believe they've already flown at least a handful of payloads up to Tiangong, just small payloads, but they're in talks of potentially having other, visiting astronauts go there as well. And
yeah,
it's super interesting. And actually,
and I was about to say that visiting astronaut program has actually started a few years ago. So I would expect maybe next year, maybe 2026, we'll hear about our first foreign crew member to Tiangong. So it'd be really interesting to see that happen.
Absolutely.
Where does ISRO fall in all of this? They were working on their own station too. Is there any collaboration between ISRO and NASA to have an ISRO module on our space station? Or
no talks yet about a module on the station, but they do have a similar Space Act agreement with ISRO, the Indian Space Research Organization, to sharing data and, here's things that we've learned. they've already ISRO has already agreed to use the International Docking Adapter. As a matter of fact, at the end of this month, the SpaceX mission will be launching, which is a robotic version of the Gemini Agena, where they're testing those docking ports in orbit, in addition to a bunch of other things like a robotic arm and a couple other technologies. I believe there might even be some life support stuff on that one, but that might be for later. But they've been able to share a lot of those data and specifications so that the Indian space station can be done. And then really interestingly, also within the past week or two, India and the European Space Agency have signed agreements to work together on the Indian space station. It's a little
Yes.
nebulous right now. It's just, the potential to be able to send ESA astronauts to their station, but nothing yet about whether or not ESA would actually contribute hardware or their own modules to that. And I'm hopeful
right
that
now, I
evolves.
think the only thing like confirmed, set in stone, is that ESA will be supporting communications with the station whilst
right.
it's out of sight with India's ground stations. But little steps, like it might just be communications right now, but there's nothing stopping them from going full bore with more things later down the line.
So, in the U.S.'s early space program, and I'm thinking of to a greater extent Gemini and Apollo, but that's at an early stage Mercury as well. Each flight was a specific test. Um, we didn't land on Apollo 1, we landed on the moon on Apollo 11 because Apollo's 2 through uh, 10 were incremental stages, incremental steps of things that we'd never done before, things that have never happened before. And so we were buying down risk uh, of all of those dangers by doing all of those new things in small stages, small steps. Apollo 8, we did the figure eight around the moon just to make sure that we could do it. And then 9 and 10 were other tests, and we finally landed on 11. And Apollo 13, we discovered that there's some dangers with what we were doing, and we tried to mitigate that. Is it smarter, and is it more expensive to perform tests in those small incremental stages like that, or is the only way forward that we have these days to just all out do it on the first try? And is there something I'm missing about why we haven't progressed farther than all of these companies having renders and test modules as opposed to actually flying stuff?
At least when it comes to the space station stuff, I think the biggest holdup has been the money and whether or not there would be a business case beyond just, NASA or even ESA being a primary customer. And I feel like there's been a lot of interest in recent years for a lot of the pharmaceutical stuff. But in that same regard, there's all these new companies that have popped up, like Varda Space, that are just growing crystals in space robotically without any humans having to be there and tend the experiment, and then return it on a small return capsule without, any human having touched it while it's in orbit. So there's a possibility there that's pharmaceutical money might get directed towards that robotic stuff and not be part of the whole space station plans. So
isn't that a bit of, if you build it, they will come?
I think so. And I think that's why they've been trying to do things in such a way, like teaming up with Redwire to have the same type of experiment racks, so that whatever happens, whether or not the waiting list is able to be gotten through before the end of 2030 or not, that list of the national laboratory experiments will be able to continue on a future station. So that's my hope anyway, that if you build it, they'll come and be able to offer as many things as you possibly can. And I'm really a lot more interested in like the manufacturing stuff, the space welding, and the test coming up early next year where they're going to actually be, trying to take some things apart and do it in such a way without creating a bunch of slag going everywhere and causing a bunch of debris. So that's what I'm more interested in, but we all have our things, I guess. So
Yeah, I'm actually very interested in Varda Space and seeing what they do. I realize, obviously, people in the loop is great. It's also super cool to see automated systems doing the same things that humans were. And I just think Varda is also really cool because I think they're going to hit a niche market that there actually is a group that wants it in terms of like payload return. And if they can do it at just stupid cheap costs, they're gonna grab a lot of what they're going to be capable of. It's almost going to be like those bandwagon or those transporter missions that SpaceX did. Like you've got this unexpected contender just showing up and taking quite a large chunk of the market that nobody thought that they actually would. And it's not destroying the market to say, there's still people that want dedicated flights for their small sats and other things like that. But it should be a really interesting future. Next couple of years, it's going to be interesting for a lot of different parts of spaceflight. So.
Oh yeah, one final thing about the space station I'm really encouraged by is that the Russians are. It's not official yet, but it's looking like they're willing to continue and not pull out in 2028, but continue all the way to 2030 in cooperating with the space station, which I'm really encouraged by that, because if they pulled out in 2028, then that's kind of it. There would be a lot of, emergency plans that would have to be deployed in order to keep going those final 2 years.
Yep. So it seems to be some cooler heads prevailing in leadership positions finally. So
I really like their new leader, Yuri Borisov. He seems like he's got a good head on his shoulders. So
he certainly feels more. What I'm struggling to think what the correct word would be, but he's certainly. Bill Nelson has said he's more cooperative, really, kind of than
diplomatic.
Rogozin. That's the word. He's more diplomatic than Rogozin was. Rogozin just, calls Eric Berger a war criminal, and you can see what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I think, Rogozin sure was big on his theatrics and his other things. He was definitely bad comparison, but maybe not with how bombastic he is. But he was very much the Jeremy Clarkson of space agency heads, But also like more prone to saying dumber things, I guess is how I would say it. So not the sharpest tool in the shed, but certainly a tool. So bless his little heart. So he brought some great jokes to he brought some great jokes, and then he left, and the joke itself was gone. So
and on that bombshell.
Big thank you to everyone who is supporting our show, and also a big thank you once again to our ever loyal Dave Avery, who has gifted 5 memberships to people in the chat. Thank you so much for that. We really, really appreciate it, and appreciate everyone who is supporting our show. We're going to continue right after this in our member show, which, believe it or not, is going to be even less informal than the discussion that we've just had. And hope that those of you who will be able to join us who are a member, including those 5 new members who are just gifted a membership. And once again, thank you to everyone for joining us and supporting us. We wouldn't be able to do this without you. And we are probably, I think we should go ahead and call it now and say we're probably going to take a break next week and be back in the new year for 2025. And To everyone who is celebrating Merry Christmas, and to those of you in the UK, Happy Christmas. Excuse me, let me say that correctly. And I hope that everyone is able to have an awesome New Year and be able to celebrate with your friends and families and have a good times and enjoy this brief break until we get back to all of the awesome craziness that we are going to see next year.
And we profusely apologize for the technical difficulties. We'll try to work on that. Apologies. See you in the member show.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right,
Bye.
y'all. Have a good one.